What's going on everyone, and welcome to a new tutorial in the Python intermediate series. In this tutorial we are going to look at operator overloading. We already know what operators are, so the plus, minus, multiplication, less than, greater than, and all the other operators in Python. So we know what operators are. Now let's go ahead and define operator overloading. Now in programming terms, operator overloading basically means using an operator for multiple different tasks. So for example, we can use the plus operator to add two numbers and get the addition of those numbers, and we can also use the same plus operator to concatenate two strings. So we are overloading the plus operator for different tasks or different results. So let's see the same example in code and it will be a bit easier to understand. So let's say we have two variables. So a and b are integers. A is equal to 1 and b is equal to 2. And if we add a and b, we'll get the result, which is 3. And if we add two strings, so let's say hello and world. So let's run this. And sure enough, it prints the addition for integers. So 1 plus 2 is 3 and it concatenates the string. So hello world. So as I said, we know that a and b belong to class int because they are integers. And when we use the plus operator on integers, it calls the dunderstr method from the int class. And we can verify this by calling the method. So let's say print and let's say int dot, and it is a special method, so underscore underscore add and double underscore, and we can pass a and b, and let's run this. And as you can see, we get the addition of 1 plus 2, which is 3. So when we use the plus operator on two integers, it internally calls the dunderstr method from the int class, and it performs the addition and then returns the result. And as for the strings, we know that strings belong to the str class or the string class. So str dot dunderstr, and then we can pass the strings. So let's say hello and world. Let's run this. And as you can see, it concatenates the string. So the plus operator is an easy way to basically call the dunderstr function from the int or the string class. And it is also easier to understand as we generally use the plus operator to add stuff. So I hope you understand what operator overloading is. We are basically using the plus operator or the add function for different tasks. So now that we know what operator overloading is, let's create our own class and overload the plus operator to add a string and an integer. So in Python, when we try to add a string and integer, it shows us an error. So let's say print 1 plus hello, and let's run this. And as you can see, we get an error. It says unsupported operand types for the plus operator, int and str. So it basically means that the int or the string class doesn't have an dunderstr method that can add an integer and string. So let's create our own class and create a dunderstr function or overload the plus operator to add a number and a string. So let's say class equals x, and this class has an init function, so def, and we only need one parameter, so self and x. So before we overload the plus operator, let's create two objects for the class x, and let's say num1 equals x, and let's pass an integer, so 1, and let's say str1 equals x, and let's pass a string, so let's say hello, and let's try to add num1 and str1. And if we run this, we'll get an error. And sure enough, we get an error. It says unsupported operand types for plus, x and x. So the plus operator doesn't know what to do with class x. So let's overload the plus operator and let's run this again. So to overload the plus operator or use the plus operator with class x, we need to create the dunderstr function. So let's do that. And the dunderstr function will take two parameters, so self and other. So in this case, the self parameter is equal to num1 and the other parameter is equal to str1, and you can also name the other parameter anything you want, but for this tutorial let's use other. And now inside the function, to return the addition, we are just going to convert the integer to a string and then return the concatenation. So let's say return an str and self dot x plus and then other dot x. So we are basically converting an integer to a string and then returning the concatenation. So let's run this again and it should work. And sure enough, it works. It concatenates 1 and hello. So let's change the order and run this again. So let's say str1 plus num1. So now in this case, the self parameter will be equal to str1 and the other parameter will be equal to num1. So as we are converting both of them to strings, it should work. So let's run this and see if it works. And sure enough, it works. It concatenates hello and 1. So we were able to overload the plus operator and also use it with our class x. So now let's do the same with the minus operator. So for the minus operator, the function is def dundersub, and this will also take the same two parameters, so self and other. So to remove or subtract characters from a string, we can use list slicing. So let's say return, and we can use self.x. So this is going to be our string, and then we can use slicing. So 0 and then minus. So this basically means start the string from the 0th index, so from the first character, and then remove the last characters of the string. So in this case, other.x is equal to 1. So it will remove the last element from the string. So let's run this again and see if it works. So let's change the plus operator to minus and let's run this. And sure enough, it removes the last character and prints hell. So let's change this to 2 and let's run this again. And sure enough, it removes two characters from hello. So it prints HEL. So I hope you are able to understand the return statement. And if you don't know about string slicing, I will leave a link for a tutorial in the description box below. So we overloaded the plus operator and also the minus operator. And similar to this, we can overload all the operators in Python. But we are not going to look at all the operators as there are a lot of them. I will list all the operators and the dunder methods for them in the description below. So there are dunder methods for all the math operators and also for the comparison operators. So one thing to remember when overloading comparison operators is that you need to either return true or false or it won't work. So make sure to return true or false if you are overloading a comparison operator. Now before we end the tutorial, let's try printing the object. So let's say str1, and let's also print a variable. So let's say a equals 2 and let's print a, and let's run this. So you can see when we try to print an object, we get the location of that object, and when we try to print a variable, it prints the value. So similar to a variable, let's say we don't want the location of the object, we want the value for that object. So in this case str1 has the value hello. So we want to print the value for that object, and to do that we can overload the dunderstr method. And this method will only take one parameter. So let's say self, and now we can go ahead and return the value. So let's say return self.x, and let's run this again. And now as you can see, it prints the value instead of the location of the object. So this is how we can overload the dunderstr method to return the value of an object, and we can return anything if we want. So let's say we return an f string, so 1 2 3 4 and space, and let's run this again. And now as you can see, it returns the f string. So we can return anything if we want, but we are mostly going to use it to return the value of the object. So this is another method that you can overload. This is not an operator, but this is a method that gets called whenever we try to print something. So that's going to be all for this tutorial. I hope you now understand what operator overloading is and how we can use it in our own classes. So we only looked at the dunder add method for the plus operator, the dunder sub method for the minus operator, but there are other methods like dunder mul for the multiplication operator, dunder gt for the greater than operator, and dunder lt for the less than operator. As I said, I will list all of them in the description box below. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching, subscribe if you learned something, and see you guys until next time.